It's empowering to realize that you don't have to chase someone to prove your value. When someone starts avoiding you, whether they respond slower, cancel plans more often, or go emotionally cold, your first instinct might be to close the gap. You want answers. You want reassurance. You want things to go back to how they used to be. That's completely natural because connection feels safe and silence feels like a threat. But what you do in this moment matters far more than what they're doing. It's where your strength is tested. Instead of leaning in when they pull away, try something radically different. Pause. Just stop, not out of punishment or spite, but out of self-respect. When someone starts avoiding you, chasing them teaches them something dangerous, that they can disconnect and you'll still show up with full emotional investment, that you'll do all the work, that you'll overfunction to keep the relationship going. And when that dynamic sets in, it rarely shifts back in your favor. People value what they have to show up for. Your silence can become your strength. Stepping back isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It gives you a moment to observe without the noise of your own anxiety or desire clouding the truth. It allows you to see things clearly. How often are they initiating? Are they meeting you halfway? Do they show up when it's inconvenient for them, or only when it's easy? You can't answer these questions when you're always in motion, always sending that next message, always filling the silence. Silence isn't empty. It's full of information. It tells you how invested the other person really is. What you're doing here is breaking a pattern. Most people double down when they feel someone slipping away. They think, maybe if I reach out one more time, maybe if I'm a little more patient, a little more loving, a little more available. But here's the hard truth. If someone's avoiding you, they already know you're available. More availability won't change their behavior. It just reinforces that you'll always be there, regardless of how they show up. And that's not the energy of someone who values themselves. That's the energy of someone who's afraid to lose something that might already be gone. Giving space creates a moment of contrast. You remove your energy from the table, and suddenly the dynamic shifts. Now they feel the difference. They notice what's missing. And more importantly, you notice how they respond. If they come closer, you get clarity. If they stay silent, you still get clarity. But clarity doesn't come from noise. It comes from stillness. That stillness is powerful because it tells them, and more importantly, it tells you that you don't need to push to be chosen. That love isn't something you beg for. It's something that flows naturally when both people are emotionally invested. This approach isn't about pretending you don't care. You do care. That's why it hurts. That's why it's tempting to reach out, to fix it, to make it feel better right now. But the short-term relief of chasing someone often comes at the cost of your long-term self-worth. And right now, your energy is better spent reminding yourself of what you deserve than convincing someone to come back. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is nothing, to sit with the discomfort and wait. Not because you're passive, but because you're wise enough to know that anyone who truly values you won't keep avoiding you. It's truly amazing how people start noticing things the moment they're no longer right in front of them. When you take a step back, you allow someone to feel the quiet that your presence used to fill. This space becomes a mirror. It reflects what you brought into their life. The conversations, the support, the little moments of care and warmth. When you're always around, those things can become invisible, taken for granted. But the moment you create distance, the contrast becomes clear. People realize the difference when the energy shifts. There's something deeply powerful about becoming less available. Not as a game, but as a statement of value. When someone avoids you or grows distant, the natural urge is to do more, to try harder, talk longer, show more love. But what that often does is rob the other person of the chance to miss you. Curiosity is born from contrast, and contrast only comes when something they were used to suddenly isn't there. When you gently pull your energy back, it creates a space for them to step into, and that space reveals more than words ever could. Being present all the time doesn't make you more desirable. It can, in fact, blur your impact. People don't become curious about what's always in front of them. They become curious about what's felt, but not fully understood. When you stop constantly showing up, it prompts the question, where did they go? And in that question lies curiosity. Curiosity leads to reflection. Reflection leads to realization. That's the subtle power of your absence. It does more work than your constant presence ever could. The truth is, curiosity and attraction are deeply linked. When people feel like they fully have you, they often stop thinking about what it means to keep you. Distance reminds them that you are not an endless resource, that your attention is earned, not assumed. This isn't manipulation, it's clarity. When someone truly values you, a little space will spark appreciation, not confusion. And if they don't reach out or take notice, that's a message too, one you need to hear, even if it's not the one you hoped for. Creating this gap also allows you to regain your own emotional grounding. When we feel ignored, we often operate from anxiety rather than calm. We send messages that don't feel authentic. We over-explain, we overcompensate. But when you choose to pull back instead, you give yourself time to breathe. You get to reconnect with yourself instead of chasing someone who's not meeting you in the middle. That energy shift is not just attractive to others, it's stabilizing for you. Because now you're moving from a place of self-worth instead of fear. This isn't about disappearing or playing cold. It's about reclaiming balance. If you're the one always initiating, always showing care, always holding space, your presence loses its edge. By allowing the silence to grow just enough, you invite them to meet you where you are. You give them the opportunity to be curious, to lean in, to wonder. And in doing that, you learn something powerful. Who reaches out when you no longer do? That answer gives you everything you need to know, not through confrontation, but through quiet truth. It's deeply freeing to know you don't always have to do more to be enough. When someone starts pulling away, your first impulse may be to close the gap, to try harder, explain more, become softer, more available, more understanding. But there's a shift in power when you stop trying to fix everything and instead just mirror what they're giving. If they're silent, you get quiet. If they're distant, you create space. Not because you're punishing them, but because you understand that real connection is built on mutual effort. You're not meant to carry the entire emotional weight of a relationship. If you're always the one reaching out, planning time together, initiating conversations, then it's not truly a partnership. When someone starts to drift, the strongest move you can make is to meet them at that same energy level. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to not pour endlessly into someone who's not filling your cup in return. This is how you protect your peace without ever having to say a word. Matching someone's energy isn't about playing games, it's about creating clarity. If you keep overextending while they keep withdrawing, you'll never know if they actually want to show up or if they're just comfortable letting you do all the work. But the moment you stop filling in the silence, you give them the chance to act. You open a door, and if they want to walk through it, they will. If they don't, that tells you something too. But either way, you're no longer guessing based on hope. You're responding based on reality. People respond to what you allow. If someone sees that they can do less and still keep you fully invested, they have no reason to try harder. That's not because they're unkind, it's because they're human. We all settle into the level of effort that's easiest unless something challenges us to rise. When you stop chasing and simply mirror their pace, you quietly invite them to rise. And if they don't, you're not left confused, you're just better informed about what they're willing to give. This kind of emotional alignment doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. It keeps you from burning out on people who aren't willing to meet you halfway. It stops you from getting trapped in cycles where you keep giving and giving, hoping they'll notice your loyalty. The truth is, people don't value what's always there unconditionally. They value what reflects their own effort back to them. When you stop showing up at 100% for someone who's only offering 30%, they feel the imbalance, and that discomfort often becomes the beginning of change. By choosing to mirror rather than chase, you're also strengthening your own emotional instincts. You begin to see patterns more clearly: who texts back when you stop reaching out, who asks how you are when you don't offer it first, who makes time when you're no longer the one scheduling everything. These aren't just observations, they're emotional data. They help you build connections based on truth, not fantasy. And most importantly, they keep your energy from being spent in places where it's not being reciprocated. It's incredibly powerful when you realize that your healing doesn't depend on someone else's behavior. When someone begins to avoid you, it's tempting to spend your energy trying to decode every word, every silence, every delayed reply. You replay conversations in your head. You wonder if you said too much or not enough. But the more you try to understand them, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Instead of drowning in questions that have no answers, you can choose to shift your attention inward toward your own growth, your own peace, your own path. Every moment you spend overthinking someone's distance is a moment stolen from your own emotional clarity. The truth is, when someone pulls away, it can trigger feelings of unworthiness that were never meant to be there in the first place. You start thinking their silence is a reflection of your value, when really it's a reflection of their own capacity or lack of it. Redirecting your focus to self-worth doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop giving power to someone else's actions to determine how you feel about yourself. This is the time to invest more deeply in the things that light you up. Read that book you've been meaning to start. Take that walk without checking your phone. Reconnect with your goals, your passions, the parts of your identity that exist outside of any relationship. When someone avoids you, it can feel like rejection, but sometimes it's just redirection. It's a moment meant to pull you back to yourself, to remind you that your value never left, you just forgot where to look for it, and it's never found in someone else's attention. It's found in the way you choose to show up for yourself. Self-worth is built through small, consistent actions that tell your mind, I matter. It's how you speak to yourself when you're hurt. It's the way you set boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. It's choosing not to chase, not to beg, not to shrink. The more you anchor your confidence in your own life, the less you need someone else to validate it. And ironically, that's when people often start to take notice, because your energy shifts. You become someone who's not looking to be completed, but simply to be met. You don't have to prove you're lovable by holding on to someone who's slipping away. You don't have to become more patient, more perfect, more forgiving just to keep someone interested. You're allowed to pause and ask yourself, what do I need right now? What do I deserve? What am I tolerating that doesn't align with the love I truly want? Redirecting your focus is not about pretending you're unaffected. It's about choosing a healthier response to protect your emotional space. Because the more you take care of yourself, the more natural it becomes to attract people who want to do the same. There's something incredibly attractive about someone who knows how to return to themselves when things feel uncertain. When you let go of needing someone else to validate your worth, you start to radiate a quiet confidence that doesn't chase, doesn't cling, and doesn't compromise for the sake of being chosen. That's when you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because you're no longer seeking anything outside yourself to feel whole. That's the place where true self-respect begins, and from that place, everything else gets clearer. It's inspiring to realize that the strongest messages you send don't always come from your voice, they come from your actions. When someone avoids you, it's easy to feel pressure to explain how you feel, to ask where things stand, or to express that you deserve more. But often the most powerful statement is the one you make without speaking. It's the pause you create when you stop overgiving. It's the moment you choose not to chase. It's the silence that replaces the usual, "Are we okay?" That silence carries a weight words can't match. People often notice more when you stop than when you speak. If you always respond quickly, always stay available, always carry the emotional weight of the relationship, it becomes expected. But the moment you step back, not with anger, but with calm detachment, it sends a clear message. It says, this is my standard. Not by force, not by confrontation, but by action. You teach people how to treat you not by demanding it, but by allowing your boundaries to shape the space between you. What makes this so powerful is that it's rooted in self-respect. It doesn't seek to control someone else's behavior. It simply expresses what you will and won't tolerate. There's no need to convince someone to act differently when your energy already communicates what's acceptable. If they're not matching your effort and you pull back without protest, they are left with a mirror. That mirror shows them how far they've drifted, and whether they come closer or stay away, you've already spoken your truth without raising your voice. This kind of quiet standard creates a different atmosphere. It shifts the dynamic. Instead of constantly trying to fix or hold the connection together, you create a pause, and in that pause, the other person has a decision to make. Will they meet you in that space, or will they stay distant? Either way, you're not begging. You're not lowering your value just to maintain connection. You're standing still with grace and letting your actions speak on your behalf. That stillness is not passive, it's intentional. You also give yourself something far more valuable: clarity. When you stop explaining and just start showing through action, people reveal themselves quickly. The ones who truly care will feel that shift and step up. The ones who don't will continue their pattern. Either way, you're not wasting your breath trying to be understood by someone who may not be listening. Instead, you're protecting your peace and letting people qualify themselves by how they respond when you stop filling in the emotional gaps. This approach invites maturity into your relationships. It teaches others that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. It communicates that your time, your energy, your attention, these are valuable, and they're given to people who reciprocate, not just receive. When you live this way, you attract people who respect that standard, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. And in the end, those silent standards tend to leave the biggest impact, because they come from a place of quiet confidence rather than emotional urgency. It's remarkable how much you can communicate by what you choose not to pursue. When you set a standard through your behavior, you become someone who doesn't just talk about self-worth, you demonstrate it. You no longer need to plead for time, affection, or respect. Instead, your actions quietly remove you from situations that don't meet your emotional needs. There's nothing dramatic about it. You're simply no longer choosing to invest where there is no mutual growth. That shift doesn't just protect your heart, it rebuilds your dignity. When someone is avoiding you, they often expect one of two things. Either you'll chase them or you'll erupt in frustration. And when you do neither, it disrupts their expectation. You step out of the script. You give no drama, no demands, just distance. That calm, graceful boundary is where your power lies. It tells the other person, I notice the shift and I don't need to fight against it. I respect myself too much to stay in a space where I'm not valued in return. And sometimes that's all that needs to be said without ever saying a word. This kind of presence speaks louder than any emotional outburst could. It reflects a grounded, secure person who knows what they bring to the table and isn't afraid to sit alone if the energy doesn't match. You begin to trust that the right people won't need to be reminded to show up. They'll just show up. And if someone doesn't, it stops becoming a mystery, it becomes a decision. A quiet one maybe, but a decision nonetheless. And once you start living this way, you begin to make fewer excuses for why people aren't showing up. You simply make room for those who will. You are not cold for protecting your space. You are not indifferent for choosing silence over conflict. And you are not being unkind for stepping back when someone repeatedly shows you they aren't ready to meet your emotional needs. You're just done performing for approval. You're done explaining what should be obvious. You're done giving your best to someone who's only half present. And by making that internal choice, your external world begins to shift. Because energy, when protected, starts attracting people who know how to hold it. What happens next often surprises people. The same ones who once took your effort for granted may begin to notice your absence. They may circle back. They may ask what's wrong. They may even become more attentive, not because you begged for it, but because you created a pause long enough for them to feel the cost of your emotional presence no longer being automatic. But here's the important part: by the time they do, you'll already be standing stronger, and you'll know whether their return is genuine or reactive. You'll be able to decide from a place of peace if it's worth it to re-engage. This kind of clarity can only come when you've made peace with not being chosen by everyone. That's where real confidence is born, not in being wanted, but in not needing to be. You stop tying your identity to someone else's ability to recognize your worth. Instead, you carry your worth with you like a quiet but unshakable truth. And people feel that. They feel the absence of desperation. They sense the shift in energy. You no longer lean forward, hoping they'll meet you. You lean back and see who's willing to come closer on their own. The reason this is so transformative is because it resets the emotional playing field. You're no longer trying to force harmony where there is disconnection. You're not throwing more energy into a space that feels inconsistent. You are simply holding a standard. If you want to be in my life, show me. Not with grand gestures, not with empty words, but with consistent presence, aligned effort, and mutual respect. And the beauty of setting this standard is that you don't need to explain it. The way you live speaks louder than anything you could ever say. This isn't about being passive or waiting silently in the background. It's about being intentional with your energy. It's knowing that you've done your part. You've shown interest, given effort, been available. And now you've taken a step back, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because when someone values you, they won't let the silence grow too long. They'll step into the gap you've created. They'll bring energy into the space you no longer fill. And if they don't, you'll still be okay because you've already reclaimed your power by not chasing after it. You're no longer performing for connection. You're not trying to prove you're worth staying for. You're simply being and letting your energy do the work. That is the most magnetic version of you, the one who stands in her or his own value without trying to convince anyone of it. You don't need a spotlight to be seen. You don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. You've learned that when people care, it shows. And when it doesn't show, you no longer force it. You let go not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. So every time someone avoids you, remember that how you respond writes the next chapter. You can chase, explain, or react, or you can pause, breathe, and allow your silence to carry your truth. You don't need to argue for attention. You don't need to beg for clarity. Your actions have already said enough. And from that place, the right people will recognize your energy, not because you shouted it, but because you lived it.